طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're talking about the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the context of 21st century world. How do we understand him and how do we relate to him? We all say we love him very much. We all say we emulate him. But to what extent do we emulate him and love him in the true sense of the word? That's what we need to analyze and understand. No point loving somebody if you don't know where, how and why you actually have that depth of love for that person. Some people superficially love the Prophet, but that's not what we're interested in. We're more interested in the depth of love for the true nature and true essence of love. Rasulullah began his mission, and within the first few years of his mission, which he did secretly, about 30 people became Muslim. About 30. It's at that time Allah told Prophet Muhammad to start the mission openly, and he began. In fact, the marking of the mission openly was when Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu became Muslim. It was just after Hamza, who had become Muslim, after a very acrimonious attack on Rasulullah by Abu Jahl, that Hamza converted to Islam. But moving away from Hamza's story, I would like to focus on Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's story. Umar was a ferocious young man, known for his bravery, his boldness, his happy-go attitude, and he had very strong, stubborn character. Nobody would ever mess with him. He was ferocious. He was coming home one day when somebody challenged him, saying, "Is there anybody in this earth, anyone who is true son of his family, his father or his mother, who can go and behead Muhammad, for Muhammad is causing too much trouble in our society?" Umar was challenged. He wanted to be the one who could do it. So he went out with his sword, wanting to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. En route, he met somebody else and who said, "Umar, where are you going?" The man was alarmed because he saw Umar walking in the direction of the Prophet's house. And he was of course worried when Umar is going in that direction with his sword open, there is something harmful. So he was worried and he stopped Umar on his track. Umar said, "I'm going to go and kill Muhammad. Muhammad has been causing too much trouble in our society." So this man said, "Perhaps you should go and look at your own household before you go and attack Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So Umar changed his direction as a result of that, saying, "What do you mean?" "Well, you should go and see your sister who has become Muslim too." And guess what? He came, he found his sister reading Quran, struck her, and after that he became remorseful because he saw his sister bleeding. And he felt very guilty of doing this. So he converted by going to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and saying, "Oh Muhammad, I came to kill you, but here I am wanting to submit to Allah Azza wa Jal." That transformation of the giant. And you know why I'm telling you this story is because it is important for people of big and substance to also convert to Islam. People who make a substantial difference to the world, whose presence is felt, who are known and regarded by other people, who are respected. Umar was all of that, and he was strong in character and in physique. And it was important for Muhammad ﷺ to have Umar convert to Islam in order to strengthen Islam. Some of you may think, how is that relevant? Well, it's very relevant. You can't go and challenge other people unless you are strong yourself. That's the moral of the story. Gaining strength internally is an essential part, as well as gaining strength externally is an essential prerequisite to facing challenges. Umar became Muslim and they all came out marching with Umar leading the march, calling people to none but Allah and His worship. So suddenly the dynamics changed. From secret mission, it became a public mission. Hostility began. The hostility was much deeper now. It was open hostility. Complete declaration of isolation, even boycott. It's at that time Prophet ﷺ decided that he wants to send a group of companions to a safe place. And he himself also looked for an alternative place where he could preach without leaving the Arabian Peninsula. He sent his companions to Ethiopia, Abyssinia, as it was known at that time. Look at the psychology of the Prophet. Prophet ﷺ wanted to keep his companions safe and secure somewhere where their rights would not be trampled, where they would be free to practice their religion, and Islam could proliferate even if there were problems with Muslims in Mecca. So where did he look? He looked for a country that is just and fair. He looked for a king or a ruler who was not a dictator. He looked for a country where people are free to practice their faith without discrimination, without prejudice, without fear. Guess what? They found a Christian country in Ethiopia, in Africa, the safest place for Muslims. And Prophet sent his companions over there so that they would practice freely and be safe and secure. It's an important feature. A lot of Muslims from Muslim world actually migrate to the West, don't they? A large number of people have come to Britain to live, have gone to America to live, have come to many countries of Europe seeking asylum from persecution, oppression, as well as dictatorship and tyranny in their countries. There is a similarity in us living in the West today. Of course, this is our home, I understand. We are as native as you can get from second, third generation of immigrants. But our parents came here, just like the companions had to migrate from their own home for various reasons. They had to migrate because of persecution and fear of the Meccans. What did they do when they went to Ethiopia and Abyssinia? They actually integrated in that society. When I say integrated, I don't mean they lost their faith. Of course they didn't. They went to preserve their faith. It's safe and secure. That's why they went. If there was a reason for them to be losing their faith, they won't be going over there. So they went, they integrated. They became part and parcel of that society. They took part in every aspect of Ethiopian life, including taking part in a war to defend, to keep that king on the throne. Here is my question for many of us who are listening to our program today. How much are you integrated in your respective society? Do you take part in the well-being of the society at large, or do you just think, I'm here for a few days, I'm going to go back to my Muslim country and I'll be happy? Well, you know what? If those Muslim countries were good, you wouldn't be here today. It is a sad testimony, in fact an indictment of all of the Muslim world for failing to uphold rule of law, protect human rights, give people honor and dignity, freedom, and not be ruled by dictators and despots and tyrants and illegitimate government. In the seerah, especially in the migration of companions from Mecca to Ethiopia, we find that. And within that particular story, there is another significant thing that happened, and that is when the king of Ethiopia asked Abu Sufyan, who had gone with a delegation from Mecca to bring the Muslims back to Mecca, and he asked the companions, what have they got as a response? Zayd bin Abi Talib was in charge of that delegation, and he read from Surah Maryam. And apparently, according to historians, Najashi, who was the king of Ethiopia, the just and Christian king, the fair king, he wept like a baby listening to the story of Maryam. So another lesson we learn from this very eloquent presentation of Zayd bin Abi Talib was that he read the appropriate verse and gave the appropriate message to the appropriate audience. As an essential part of our faith, it's in the Quran. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana, and invite other people to the path of Allah with wisdom and appropriate examples. Now here is this in full manifestation in Ethiopia. So the question I have for all of us to reflect is, how much is our message relevant to the time that we live in the West? How much of what we say is actually tailored for the palate of the people around us? And how much of our behavior, customs and traditions are alien and foreign? Those are the things we need to reflect on when it comes to seerah of our Prophet ﷺ, because Prophet needs to be understood in the context of the society in which we live. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to explore about customs and traditions and the context in which we live and the life of the Prophet in Ethiopia, as well as his trial in Taif. So don't go too far away. Assalamu alaikum.
ما دعا لله داع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We're talking about, of course, the life of the Prophet. So now the companions are in Ethiopia, some of them, and some of them are in Mecca. The ones in Mecca are with the Prophet and not safe. So what does the Prophet do? He himself, with his adopted or freed slave, as some of you would call Zayd ibn Haritha, decides to go all the way to Taif. Taif is a city, not very far away actually from Mecca. It's a mountainous city. The temperament of that city is cold, not so hot. It's green. So Prophet ﷺ was looking for greener pastures and he went literally to Taif. There Banu Thaqifa, as we know, lived. Prophet ﷺ invited them to the path of Allah, but they rejected. In fact, they stoned him. They pelted him until he could take it no more. They stoned him so much. And when he resided in a garden taking shelter from the stones that they were throwing, angels were sent. And they were asked, Muhammad was asked, O Prophet, would you like us to lift up the mountains of the Taif from both sides and crush the people from within? Prophet said, no, that's not the reason why I'm here. He made prayers for them. In fact, he blamed his own self for his weakness and his own folly for not being able to convey the message right. Prophet of compassion is not for no reason God calls him. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Muhammad, you are nothing but a mercy to the whole of humanity, the entire humanity. You are a person of mercy, compassion. Here is a demonstration of compassion. Prophet ﷺ returned from Taif, wounded, head to toe, blood pouring out of his head, but not angry against the people. He comes back to Mecca, and in Mecca, persecution begins to even escalate further. Boycott, physical attack, isolation, verbal abuse, including the killing of one of the companions, female companions actually. Sumayya, as we know, killed by Abu Jahl, who killed her by inserting a spear through her private part. Sumayya died in that process. That was the brutality of those people who did not like the message Prophet was giving. And yet what was the message Prophet was giving? He was telling them to become loyal to God, believe in one God. Be good to one another. In other words, be kind, compassionate, caring and sharing. Create equality between all people. Work for justice and fairness. Redistribute the wealth. Don't keep wealth in the pockets of a small few. Society must come together to create a cohesion that is conducive and sustainable. Those are the messages that he was giving. Love your neighbor, respect your parents, give your due to the poor and the needy, keep your environment clean. Why would the Quraysh not like it? Why would the Meccans not like it? There is a reason for it. It would permanently alter the balance of power. So the rich would no longer be able to exploit the poor. I believe when Islam is under attack in the West, There are some people, not the entire West, but there are some people in the West who are calculated in their opposition. They know that if Islam was to find its root in the society, their days would be numbered. They would no longer be able to lead a life without morality, without boundaries. They would no longer be able to usurp and accumulate unethical wealth. They would no longer be able to exploit the society just because they want to profit. Profiteering will not be normal. Immorality will not be tolerated. So they do everything possible to deride and vilify Islam. Our challenge is to make sure our message is right. Our challenge is we remain steadfast in our own personal conviction as well as our personal character and our conduct. We demonstrate utmost level of compassion and mercy like the Prophet did. And most importantly, we never give up hope. That's exactly what the Prophet did. Never gave up hope. Even when they conspired to kill him, to destroy him, to wipe him off the face of this earth, he didn't give up. Look at the irrationality of the Quraysh, the Meccans at that time. The Meccans believed that Muhammad was not only a powerful poet and a soothsayer, a magician, even as much as if you were to hear his words accidentally, you'd convert. That's how irrational they became. There is a story that a man came to Mecca, and at the outskirts of Mecca he was told, if you're going to the Kaaba, make sure you don't listen to Muhammad. You'll become possessed by his jinns, black magic. So this man put cotton wool in his ear so that he wouldn't hear the recitation of the Prophet. One day he forgot. Lo and behold, Prophet was reciting Quran and the man was mesmerized. Not only was he mesmerized, but he was attracted. His heart melted. And he embraced Islam. But the opposition was irrational. Verbal abuse, physical attack, isolation, boycott, killing, imprisonment, torture, name it. The companions faced it. And the perpetrators were those irrational Meccans. And it was one bunch of people that I have referred to already. The rich and powerful elite. They were hell-bent on making sure that that status quo remains. So it would serve them. And I believe if you and I are sincere with our message in this world, there will be a class of people who will be hell-bent on causing misery and trouble for us. Good people on this earth, decent people on this earth will be very receptive to the message of Islam. And that's the beauty of Islam, isn't it? Beauty of the life of the Prophet. That you suddenly understand that his message was not just received and welcomed by people, but a whole society began a transformative process. And some in that process refused, but some didn't. And some were too scared to make a change. So the powerful controlled the popular culture like we have today. A powerful bunch of people dictate and determine what popular culture is acceptable and what isn't. Our challenge is to overcome such barriers and get our message across. Message of decency, compassion, loyalty to God, and loyalty to our fellow human being. It's not that difficult. Prophet found it extremely challenging. So a bunch of people were in Ethiopia protecting themselves and furthering their religion. Prophet tried Ta'if and he failed. He was in Mecca facing persecution. They were plotting to kill him. In fact, they gathered together a big scheme. It was the final blow. Prophet began to sense that something very dramatic is going to happen. and he was longing for a revelation to order him to find an alternative place. And it's at that time he met a group of people during a Hajj season who had come from Medina. He met them, he built a small relationship, and they converted. Next year they came in a bigger number and they converted. Prophet sent them a teacher who went to teach people of Medina, of course. That's where these people came from. People of Medina were being prepared and being made ready for Prophet ﷺ. And Prophet ﷺ was longing in his heart for an order from Allah so they could send his companions and he could migrate. And revelation came, tell your companions to migrate from Mecca to Medina. But you don't migrate, Muhammad, you wait, for my final order was the order of Allah. All the companions began to migrate. Abu Bakr and Prophet were left behind, and few other handful of Muslims. So here is the transformation. The society that was persecuting, society that was unreasonable, irrational, and society that was abusing all the human rights of everybody. Prophet ﷺ left that society after trying for 13 years peacefully to transform them, change them. And he sent his companions now to Medina in biggest number possible to a society that was willing to change, embrace, and become active in transforming the world at large. So in our next episode, we'll be talking about Medina, how the transformation began, how seed to establish a society in action, organic, real. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
وجب الشكر عليك